With reaction to my opening statement and all the developing news tonight is President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani. All right, good evening, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to thank you for being with us tonight.
Hi.
Okay, so today
Judge.
we get this New York Times article, and the New York Times is suggesting that Don McGahn, the president's White House counsel, is cooperating with the special counsel Mueller, the New York Times suggesting that he's being teed up to take a fall for the president. What do you think of this?
Well, I think you're right that the article could sound that way, but the reality is that the president encouraged all the people who testified to tell the truth, to take as long as they needed to do that, and as long as they did, they'll have no problem with the president or us, and we have no reason to believe that Don McGahn didn't do that. And as John Dowd, who was the president's lawyer at the time, said today loudly and clearly, right, Don McGahn was the strongest witness for the president, meaning he completely gave testimony that said that the president didn't do anything wrong. Which the president didn't do. He didn't do anything wrong. But
who would plant a story or a suggestion or create an effort to legitimize a claim that McGahn's trying to take the fall? I mean, what does it tell you? Does it tell you that the New York Times is making stuff up and is fake news? Does it tell you that Mueller is starting to panic and starting to get McGahn to work with him to,
yes,
to tell McGahn, hey, look, the president's teeing you up for a fall? Who is this? What's going on?
Well, I think the best analysis would be that the Mueller team is panicking. They know they don't have a case. There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. They can't prove it, and they are trying to get the president to testify. And they're hoping that if they put out a story like this, in which they suggest that McGahn is cooperating against him, but don't say it, they don't say that he'll want to come in and explain himself. Now, the president wants to testify. The president wants to be open and transparent. Otherwise, he wouldn't have encouraged 30 witnesses, including McGahn, to testify. He wouldn't have turned over 1.4 million documents. He wouldn't have not exerted executive privilege as he did if he didn't believe that he didn't do anything wrong. But he's not going to be trapped into perjury. We're not going to allow it to happen where he tells the truth, some other guy is lying, and they're going to believe, like Comey, the guy who's lying.
Right. Let me read this. This is a McGahn statement from White House counsel McGahn. President Trump, through counsel, declined to assert any privilege over Mr. McGahn's testimony. So Mr. McGahn answered special counsel team's questions fulsomely and honestly, as any person interviewed by federal investigators must. So through his counsel, the personal attorney for Don McGahn, they make it clear that even the president said, you know what, Don, you go out there and testify. I don't have a problem with that.
Absolutely true, Judge. The president had no problem with it. We have no problem with it if it took 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. I know how often lawyers repeat themselves, as you do, particularly if they want you to change your story, right?
Yeah.
So I've sat through depositions that are 4 days long. They should have been a half hour.
All right, let me ask you this, and then let's move on for that. I just think that the placement of this story, Mr. Mayor, so close to the point where Americans are fed up with this investigation of Bob Mueller, and they're sick of the special counsel. But I can't help but think that it may have some connection to the Manafort case. Now, we've got this tax case from 2007 having nothing to do with Russian collusion. Manafort is in solitary confinement 23 hours a day from 2007 case. Do you think Mueller's panicking about the verdict in that case?
Look, I don't know. I've heard rumors to that effect. I think they shouldn't. Whether Mr. Manafort is convicted or acquitted or hung jury, it's the same for our case. After all, we're not part of it. I do think, like the president does, that Mr. Manafort has been treated horribly. This is not a terrorist. This is not a killer. They arrest him in a horrible way. They raid his house and they put him in solitary confinement.
It's unbelievable.
My goodness.
Rudy, it is unbelievable. I mean, I've prosecuted for 30 years. I never saw anything like this. Never. But anyway, let me just... Go ahead.
The only one I can remember I ever had put in solitary confinement was Carmine the Snake Persico, because he offered $400,000 to kill me, and I was insulted that it was so little money.
I don't mean to laugh, but obviously that wasn't going to work. I wasn't worried about that. But I just think that they are pressing really hard right now that try to get Donald Trump to testify. And I think that there's a lot more psychology to this story than anything else. And when Mueller comes out, and I'll say it because maybe you can't, and he says, or one of his people says, we got 4 times more evidence in the next Manafort case, that tells me that they may be shaken a little. What say you, or can you?
Look, I can't say much about that. I can kind of listen to the people that are giving out rumors and say there may be something to it, but I don't know. And the reality is, like the president, I really feel that Mr. Manafort has been treated pretty close to horribly.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there are a lot of people that will agree with you, even the judge, T.S. Ellis. Anyway, Rudy Giuliani, thanks for taking time out of your night tonight.